Hey, welcome back, Isaac. You know, we've got the beginnings of a fantastic smash hit AAA rated computer game here.
Yes.
We've done some good bits on plotting out what we're doing, and we've got a screen now. What do we do next?
Yeah, so far we just got, as you said, the screen, we got the walls drawn, and we know how to do that with Pygame. And actually, I ended up the video explaining how to make the program to wait for something to happen. Otherwise, you know, Pygame will just simply quit and just draw and quit, and that's not what we want. So that's why this while loop is here, just waiting for events to happen. So what we're gonna be doing in this video is to focus on implementing that ball moving around, how we do the trick to do that. So I want you to get back to my definition in my first video, in which I was explaining what the ball object will be, right? So this is the class ball. A class is just a way that we have to define in Python or in any other programming language how the object will behave, right? So what I'm going to do, my code is split into three main parts for now. So the variables here, the scenario down here, and what I want to do in the middle is just to define my classes, right? So I'm gonna define a class for the ball, and we're gonna call it ball, nothing fancy, right? And initially you can just say this class is gonna be doing nothing, and then later on we will have to implement the paddle as well, that initially it does nothing, right? So what do we need in the ball? So if we look again back on the paper, we know that for the ball, we want to store coordinates X and Y. We need that, right? So that's gonna be, let's say, intrinsic variables of that particular class. So for that to happen on Python, which is slightly different from other programming languages, you need to define a constructor here in it, and then you do need to provide the input for X and Y. So whenever we create a new ball, we need to tell it where to put those coordinates, right? So basically you need to create the ball and then give it values just like this. So the position of X is going to be the X that is being given, and the position of Y is going to be the Y that is actually given by the user. So now that I have defined this, I could simply create the ball object. And to create the ball, basically I could do it down here before we draw the scenario. So create objects. So we're going to create an object, right, that is called ball, the one that we're going to be using to play, which is going to be of this type of object, which is ball. And the two arguments, as you can see already when I put this, is telling me that the arguments are X and Y. So where do we want to locate the ball in the very first place? So for that, what you need to do is to get back to your drawing and think, okay, I want the ball to be in this particular position on the screen. So initially you just want to put the ball close to the side of the screen, right? So it's gonna be the X position will be width minus the radius of that ball, right? Because we're gonna be drawing that from that point in there. So that could be the width minus the ball radius. But we haven't defined that yet. Actually, we do need to define it here in our class. So you need to define here, and then we can give it the value, for example, 10. That will remain the same for every ball object that we create. We're gonna create just one in this particular game, by the way, but that's how it works. So you could do this, and then you say ball.radius. So that's the X coordinate. And the Y, we just want to sit the ball in the middle of the screen. So we have that variable height, and then I want it just in the very middle. So we divide that by 2, and I'm using 2 of them just to get the integer out of this 2, actually. Right, so as you can see, Sean, it's really important that we define those global variables that will be very important in our game, because if we define it manually, then we're gonna carry all those numbers all the time. It's gonna be very tricky to get it right, and then one small modification will be a mess in the whole code. So that's why we use that. So here we can create that now. If I run that, nothing is gonna happen at all. We're gonna create again the window here. I didn't draw anything at all, right? So that's the first thing I need to do. I want to show the ball. So to show the ball, in Python you always have to include the object itself to do stuff in there, and then you need to draw a circle There is a truck just outside and Ori just moving all around. You know, this is a new state and they're working outside and we cannot control that here. The second function that we wanted to include in our bow was something to make it appear on the screen, right? So we actually need to draw the circle. So Pygame will provide actually a function for that is also within the class draw. Instead of a rectangle, we need to basically draw circle. Once again, if you look at the documentation, you will see that you need to provide where in the surface, which surface we're using, because actually you could create multiple windows if you want to. And so you need to use the screen. But this is a bit funny because this screen is a global variable. It's something that we are using here, down here. So you need to tell Python, look, I'm gonna be using that global screen. That's a bit of a tricky thing to do with Python, by the way. And the next thing that you need to say is the color once again, that as you may remember that was pygame.color, and then you need to say white, right? If you want it to draw it white. Actually, it could be nice to have this a bit in a different variable actually, and be able to draw the ball in different colors. So what you could do is to basically use an argument, is a parameter here, color, that whenever you want to show the ball, you indicate that color, and then you use the object from Pygame. And right after that, you need to say the coordinates X and Y of the ball, which is basically the position of that particular ball. So that's why we use self.x, self.y to indicate where the position of that particular ball is. And then right after that, you need to indicate the radius. And with that, Pygame should be able to draw that circle on there, right? So this is what we do. So we have defined the class, we can create one, and now we need to actually show it. Where do we want to show it? We could just simply show it right after this. So whenever you've done the wall, so you could do ball play dot show, and that will work, hopefully. Let's see that actually. So when I run the program, I actually did something wrong. Why? Look, it's complaining down here saying missing one positional argument, the color, because I forgot to mention that I want this to be the foreground color, which is this Pygame.color white. Yeah, so I forgot to do that, so that's why it's complaining and it doesn't do anything then. So if I run it now, that should be here. There we go. Beautiful ball. It's very small one actually. I think I maybe want something bigger than that. So let's modify that. Let's put 20 maybe, right? So we can draw the ball, but okay, that took us again quite a bit of time. So how do we actually make it move?
Well, presumably you have to draw it somewhere else, right?
Exactly. But we want the ball to move automatically. That's actually kind of a weird thing to think of. It's not like we want to be telling the ball to draw. We want just the ball to move all along through X and Y coordinates. So that's why I was saying before in the previous videos that, well, this is my first definition of the ball class in which I just said X and Y, but actually the ball will be alive. So actually that ball will be moving through X and Y. So actually we should include here the speed and the velocity on the X axis and the one on the Y axis. So that will be how much we increment the position and move the position of X and Y every single step, right? Every single step of the game. So we're gonna have to add this to our class definition. So we are gonna have to include Vx and Vy, and I'm gonna complete it here, self Vx. I'm going a bit quick in here, but that's how it works. So whenever I create the ball, now I put before only 2 parameters, but now we have 2 more, which is the speed that we want this to go, let's say, on the horizontal axis and the vertical one. So initially, for example, I'm gonna say that I just want the ball to move horizontally, not vertically. So the one on the y-axis is gonna be 0, and for this one, I can say, for example, let's say -1. I just want 1 pixel to move every single time, but I want this to go from the right to the left of the screen, and X was a positive number, right? So we want this to go 1 by 1. Actually, I don't like this, as you know. I don't like to type and hard code anything. I'm gonna create a variable which is called velocity. I'm gonna define that in my global variables here. So velocity will be equal to 1. And we're gonna have -1 to begin with, right? So this is what we have, but now we still need to make it move. So to make it move, I'm gonna create a different function that will be updating the position of the ball. And that's gonna be happening automatically. What I want to do is to show the ball in the next position, right? So I just want to update the position of X and Y based on the velocity. So basically what I'm saying is the position X will be the position X plus that velocity, right? So we're gonna increment that. You can implement this nicer if you want to, but for now, let's do nice and dirty code, and there you go. So self.y plus the speed, the velocity on here. Whenever we have increased, we have modified the coordinates, what we can do is to use the function that we implemented before to draw it again. Self.show, we need to put the color here, so that means that this function will also need a parameter color as well. All right, so that's how it works. Is that it? We will see. I'm gonna just go ahead with it. You know, that's how I like doing programming, Sean, is you do something, you try, you see that it failed, and then you refine and refactor your code, right? So that's a good practice, actually, just to play a bit with it. So we're gonna update, and what I want to do is to update that automatically. So where in the code we should be doing that? We should be doing that within this while loop. So the while loop is just waiting for things to happen, right? So unless the user click the cross, well, we can actually just simply call ball.update based on that foreground color. And that should actually draw the ball in the next position. Something I don't want to forget right now is that whenever I draw something on the screen, it's not ball, it's ball play. So we update the surface, but we need to flip it, right? You remember that I told you need to flip every chain that we do in the surface. So this line up here shouldn't be here, should be within the while loop, because we want to draw it in a different position and update the surface, and draw it in a different position and update the surface. So basically I'm gonna cut from here and put it right after this, right? So, well, I mean, ideally actually you should do it the other way around, so we do it this way. Okay, if I do this, what do you think is gonna happen, Sean?
I'm worried that you said when things go wrong, so I feel like something's not going to be quite right, but I'd like to see, I don't know.
Something is gonna go wrong, very wrong, because we're updating. But you will see, this one is pretty funny. Woo! Oh dear, hey! It's going, I mean, it works, but why did we get that line?
Well, because we're just drawing the ball over and over and over again, right?
Yes, but we didn't somehow eliminate the previous ball, right? So the trick to make a ball, to make an object move on the screen on Pygame is to draw it again. So in the current position, you put it black, you put it with the background color, and then you paint it in the next pixel, right? In the next step. What we're gonna be doing is to use this foreground, and you should use also a background color that is gonna be Pygame.color black. So we're gonna use that as global variables. And what you should do in this update, I made it before with this parameter, but maybe it's not even needed. What you want to do is to use those two variables, background color and foreground color, as global variables from our program. And the first thing that you do is to hide the ball. You actually hinted it before, Sean. So first thing you do is to put it in the background color before you update anything at all. And then you update, and then you use the foreground color in the new position. So that should now work, I hope. Let's see if that works. Oh, something is wrong. Yes, because update doesn't have a color. So that's a mistake that I forgot to. I have changed a bit the definition of my function update, and I forgot that I don't have to indicate the color because I'm using global variables for this. All right, so that should work now. Oh, there you go. Oh, man, can you see that?
We seem to have drawn a hole in the wall.
Why do you think we got the hole?
Well, we didn't tell it there was a wall there. We just told it to keep moving to the left and drawing black and white, right?
Actually, the ball is now being drawn somewhere outside of my screen.
It's on its way to display.
It's getting negative numbers and trying to draw it outside, and it cannot, right? So The next step would be to manage the collision of that ball with the wall, right? So how do we do that? So basically, this is actually not too difficult. We basically need to think of what are the coordinates of the wall and tell the ball, hey, whenever you're gonna collide, do not draw it, do not collide, just invert your direction, change your direction. So if the velocity was negative, now we wanna positive. We want to change and go to the other axis. So just to manage the collision, I'm gonna leave that as an exercise for you. If you want to continue doing the game, basically what you need to do is to modify this update function. And before you actually update the position X and Y, you need to check and, for example, store that new position on a different variable and check, am I already touching the border? And that means the wall here, but also the top and the bottom walls. You need to check those two and change the velocity. So now I have pre-cooked this for you, how to update the position of the ball to manage the collision with the walls, right? So this is what I'm doing here and down here. And now if we run the code, and actually I'm gonna do something funny, I'm gonna change the velocity also for the y-axis, so you see the ball doing something nice. So if I run this, you will see that this goes and touch and return, and then the ball will go away and we'll never get back, right? So this is what we managed to do in a series of 3 videos, I think, so far. And basically I show you already all you need to complete the game on your own. Now you need to define the class for the paddle, and then you need to, for the paddle, as I said, is the y-axis what we want to control. I'm gonna show you that in 1 minute, but then the rest of the game is for you to decide. If you want to see more, just let us know and we will make more videos detailing how to do that part. So I'm gonna copy paste a bit again of pre-cooked code just to show you that the game is actually doable, but no more than that.
I'm guessing a paddle is going to be, you know, a thing that you move, but also the ball, you just need to then check whether the paddle's there or not, or, you know, and it acts a bit like a wall if the paddle's there, right?
Yes, exactly, yes. So to manage, then you need to manage collision, but then you can manage that within the ball. So the ball will not be updated the position, and then you need to control what the paddle is. So, but the paddle class, that's the one that we are dealing with at the moment. So that paddle class is the same idea as before, but now we're drawing a rectangle and we only use the position Y because we're gonna remain the X in the space that we want. We're gonna be using a function from Pygame that takes where the position of my mouse is. So the idea is for you to try to complete that on your own, but if you want to see a more detailed video on this, I'm happy to do that. But otherwise, I'm gonna show you the final game. This is what I have in here, and I'm gonna run it. And now you can see the ball moving all around. It goes actually a bit fast, right? And that's because typically you do need to do something. You need to control the speed of the program. Depending on your operating system, this while loop that we have down here, we have to control it. And to do so, you should be looking at the documentation and looking at something called clock that will make this while loop to behave in the way that we actually want, right? So this while loop in here has now a line clock that tells me the update, the frame rate in which the ball will be drawing from pixel to pixel, right? Otherwise it will go too fast or too slow. I think on Windows actually goes amazingly fast, on Linux goes okay, on Mac goes like very slow, like a turtle, super slow. All right, so this is the final game, but it's not still final. So if you want to know more, we want to do data science now on the game to improve it. And knowing that, we are gonna be able to predict the position of the paddle for new positions down here. So if we get the position of the ball and the speed, I want to know where I normally put the paddle to go